Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome, Charlene, to the Always Andy's Mom podcast. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and tell Kristen's story because she deserves to have her story told.
Oh, absolutely. So you reached out a few months ago and started just telling me about Krissy, and there's a lot to tell. And I just loved reading everything. And we will not be able to go into as much detail here today as I would love to be able to do, but I am excited to let the audience just learn about Krissy. So why don't we start out by just talking about her birth and some of those complications that happened just shortly after birth, because she certainly had a lot of complications in her life.
Yes, she did. I just said recently she came into the world as fast and furious and traumatic as she left the world.
Yeah.
And so I guess just to start, we had struggled with infertility and we weren't supposed to have any biological children, and we were fine with that. It really wasn't one of those big struggles that a lot of people have. We were just like, okay, we're going to adopt kids, and that's good. There's a lot of kids that need a home. And then after our second daughter, I had one miscarriage at 16 weeks, and the doctors were all baffled, and they said, well, I don't know why it happened. It won't happen again. But 6 months
Why the
later,
pregnancy happened, you mean?
Yeah. They were like, well, it shouldn't have. And so they said, don't worry about it. It shouldn't happen again. 6 months later, I was pregnant with Kristen, and everything was going well. We were planning a trip to Florida, and when we found out we were pregnant, we asked the doctor, and he said, just move it up. Make sure you're back by the time you're at 30 weeks.
Right. I mean, that should be plenty of time.
Yeah.
Because pregnancy was going much better than you certainly expected. They expected there to be no pregnancy at all. But everything,
and we were driving
going beautifully. We
were
so you're not flying. Yeah.
So we went down there with our older children. They were 4 and 2, well, 1.5. And we got down there. We had one day, and in the middle of the night of Saturday night, we got there on a Friday. Saturday night, after a day of swimming and being at the beach, in the middle of the night, I woke up early, and I had like back pains, and I hadn't been to the Lamaze classes or anything, and it was my first full pregnancy. And I thought, oh, that's odd. Maybe I did something in the pool,
Right. Sure.
And then, then I started thinking, these are coming like every 5 minutes. I wonder if this is labor. But
how many weeks were you at that point?
30. Well,
okay.
So I was just under 29,
just like 29 weeks.
Yeah. And so then I got up to go to the bathroom, and then I was bleeding. So then I knew something was wrong. So long story short, we were down in Florida on Captiva Island, which is off of Fort Myers, 2 islands off. And my husband's aunt lived in Sanibel, and my mother-in-law was there too, visiting, and we called. And my husband's aunt Ruth came out and rushed us, which a rush was like a 45-minute drive into Fort Myers to, going down the islands at 35 miles an hour, which all you're allowed. We were breaking the rules. And my mother-in-law came and stayed with the other kids, and she got us to Fort Myers Hospital. And we came in, and it was probably like 5 a.m, and the midwife said, this baby's going to be born now. All the way there, I was thinking I'm going to be on bed rest down in Florida.
Right. How am I going to get home? This is going to be hard to get home when I'm pregnant. And
she was born like 45 minutes later.
Wow.
And they kept saying, just wait, the doctor's not here yet. I'm like, whatever.
You tell
then-
that to my baby, because my baby is not waiting.
and she came full force. And of course, when you're going through this, there's not your regular doctor. There's nobody around. They're all strangers. And, long story short, we were there at the beginning or after scores and everything. That's what they're called, right? They were
Apgar
good.
scores,
I
yeah.
mean, she was 11 weeks early. And, but she still weighed 3 pounds, 6 ounces. And
Oh, that's not bad, actually.
yeah, and 15 inches long. And, initially everything looked good. Of course, they whisked her away. She didn't turn blue or anything. And then we got to meet her, and it was just all normal, like preemie stuff, if that can be normal.
Right.
To first, she's a preemie.
I mean, for me, it can be pretty normal. I'm taking care of lots of preemies.
And really for the first even 1 or 2 years of her life, they kept saying, well, she was a preemie, but so then they kind of, over the next couple of days, there were some odd things. She had a club foot, but we kept, her cousin had a club foot, there were things like that.
Yeah.
She had some weird markings on her hands that sometimes kids with chromosomes with Down syndrome have. And which is odd because I have them too. So then the doctor put that, well, no, you're fine. And there was just some different little things. She had some pulmonary stenosis that they noticed. And so they were doing chromosome tests, and everything always came back okay. So they kept saying, it just must be that she's preemie. So after my husband, after 2 weeks, had to go home and work. Someone had to work, and I stayed with the other 2 kids. Fortunately, Dave's aunt was able to allow us to stay in her place. They allowed for me and my other 2 kids. And we stayed for like after about 4 weeks, the big thing came, how are we going to get home?
Right. Right.
And when will she be good? So finally, Dave went home after 2 weeks. After 6 weeks, Dave was going to come down with and pick up my 2-year-old daughter at the time, Casey, and take her back just to get some of the family home. And that very day before he came, we got a message from my doctor back here in Michigan that they were going to send the med jet down to Florida to pick us up and take us back on Saturday. So my husband got down on Friday night to take back my daughter. Then we still had my son there. So we got permission for my son and myself and Krissy to go back on this med jet. They came from Michigan in the morning, picked us up at the hospital at 11. We flew into Gerald Ford Airport. The ambulance took us to Butterworth at the time. And then we were 2 weeks in, the ICU baby unit there, where and so by that time she was weaned off the ventilator already.
Right.
Pretty much.
They wouldn't have wanted to transport her.
Right. No, she was weaned off that, and she got weaned off that for a normal, and she had a small brain bleed, but they said it was nothing, traumatic, whatever. But anyway, so we got back to, and so when she was able to feed enough with the bottle, I was breast pumping the whole time. Then they let her come home, and she came home on a heart monitor, but she had to be fed every 3 hours around the clock, and blah, blah, blah. And so we just kind of lived in that preemie world for a while. And she had her club foot. They had to cast that and recast it. I was really good friends with the orthopedic caster. We practically should have gotten together at Christmas, but anyway, but then just little things. She didn't grow good. And they kept saying, they kept saying it was because she was a preemie, but as a mother, you start to know, she's not sitting up, and she rolled over really early, and that was really weird. But then later she stopped rolling over.
Okay.
So then you're going through all this thing. Was it one of her immunizations? Who knows? We don't know, but she was eventually labeled with cerebral palsy. And I don't know, as time went on, we saw endocrinologists, cardiologists, geneticists, orthotics people, ears, nose, and throat, just everything
and anything.
They could never find a chromosome. They were all fine. they even did like a deep skin chromosome. Have you ever heard of that? Where it's more than a blood test. She had a little scar on her leg for her whole life where they took tissue.
Yeah. They don't do that anymore. We do all sorts of different stuff now. We do some microarray array stuff. It's so much different. The genetics are so much more advanced now. I even think of a teenager that I have is 18 that they didn't know forever and ever and ever. And finally, I feel like in the last couple of years, they went back to genetics again. And now it's like, oh yeah, this is something that's been figured out. And it's just one of those things that like, now you do start to know. Sometimes it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change this guy's life at all. But it had always been frustrating to the mom that like the chromosomes are all normal. Everything's all normal. And he is clearly not normal, So
that was it. Exactly. Us too. It's like one time it was like, she has a normal brain scan of an 18-month-old. It's like, well, yeah, but so I mean, but that's kind of where we got. It's like, she is what she is.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we accepted that with a smile on our face or anything. Yeah. I mean, it would be dishonest of me to say that it wasn't hard,
Oh, for sure.
But I mean,
what I want to talk about now, though, is about just Krissy and her specialness and her personality and how that kind of grew, and just to get people to kind of learn about her and love her a little bit, because I loved hearing some of these things that made her laugh and just the personality parts, because it's harder when you have a nonverbal child in some ways, especially for other people to see their personalities. And I just want you to share that with us.
Well, I want to say, because of her things, and I just briefly say, like, she had 2 surgeries where she had a halo on her head for 6 months each. And she was a fighter, but that was part of her personality. She was so feisty and she knew exactly what she wanted. And I'll tell you, it could drive you crazy sometime. And I recently said to somebody, the things that drove me the most crazy are what I missed the most. Yeah. Like her little feisty attitude and her stubbornness. But she taught us a lot of things, but one thing that I'll always remember, she had the bluest eyes ever. They were so blue. And to this day, if I see a blue sky or a blue, I'll say it's Krissy eye blue, Yeah. They were just so blue. So I wrote a whole list of the things she loved to do. She did learn to walk, and she later on in life, she learned to ride her little bicycle, her 3-wheel bicycle, and she loved that. But I just things like she always would laugh when people would sneeze or cough or blow their nose. And, we thought it was funny, but you go to a church service in the middle of the winter and somebody sneezes and or they're having a coughing attack and she's cracking up in the back seat.
I just love that. I think that's hilarious though.
Or she would burp and laugh, or someone else would, but you couldn't get away with that kind of stuff because she would laugh at you and know all that. The other things that are unusual about her, she loved thunderstorms, whereas most kids are afraid. And I think part of that is due to my husband. He always taught our kids to love thunderstorms. Like, oh, isn't that neat? Listen to the thunder and the rain. And he would take them out in the garage to watch it. And so it got to the point where if it was thundering or lightning, Kristen loved to go out in the garage if it was summer and watch it. And she loved to swing, and she loved to swing in a warm rain. She would, if it was raining, just like she would just love to go swing in the rain. But the thunderstorms was interesting. She loved the lightning part of it. Mm-hmm. And if it was lightning, she would blink her eyes like that. And if she would wake up in the middle of the night and see a lightning storm, she would wake me up just by she would make a noise, and I'd go in there and she'd blink her eyes just to tell me it was lightning. And that was okay. Then we said, yeah, it's lightning out. And then I'd go back to bed. We'd both go to sleep.
She's just like, Mom, you don't want to miss this. It's lightning. Lightning's cool.
And when it would thunder, if she was awake, I would always say, oh, that's God clearing his throat. And she thought that was funny. She would like to talk about the thunder and lightning. So that was neat. And she always loved things that were above her, like helicopters, airplanes, geese flying over, hot air balloons. We used to go to the hot air balloon festival in Hudsonville until it got canceled. And she would just love that. You know, she would sit on her swing in the back and hope for an airplane to fly over, which were kind of in the path to the airport. So she would see them quite often. And we're in the path to the beach too. So we would see private helicopters flying that way and stuff. But she loved things that were up and rainbows. She had I don't know what you want to say, an ability to see a rainbow before anybody else would. And that was something that our pastor talked about at her funeral, because sometimes she'd be pointing at the window and I'd go, what? And I'd go out there and there would be a rainbow. Like you wouldn't even be looking for a rainbow. You wouldn't even know that it was rainbow conditions, but she always saw them. And she was excited about rainbows. Let me see what else. She loved to take walks. I mean, she kept me in shape, especially with COVID when all our programs were shut down. We would walk like 4 miles a day, 6 days a week. Wow. Down the path and back. And she loved walks. And in the winter, we would go to the mall, which wasn't my favorite, but that was a place to walk. And then when she got older, the last year of school, when she was 26, she won a bike at school. She had a bicycle that she biked at the Ottawa Area Center. That was kind of hers. And I have someone to thank there for helping her to win it. I don't think it was, he just said, oh, she won a bike. And so when she graduated from school, we were able to take that bike home, and she would bike around our driveway, or I would take her to the church parking lot down the road to bike. And then when COVID hit, the schools were closed down. I found this path behind our local school that she biked, and she had a trail. And I have a thing on my phone that she did 2 miles exactly every time. And it was always the same way. She'd go around one track, turn around, go around this door, and around. It was always 2 miles. I would say, let's take this way. No, it had to be the same way. That was
same way.
Part of her OCDC, autism, whatever. And she loved that bike too. A lot. I was very thankful for that bike when COVID hit, because it was one more activity we could go do.
Sure.
You know, and we have a cottage up at Silver Lake by Pentwater, a family cottage by the sand dunes, and she loved to go there. And she loved boat rides. The splashier and wetter, the better. She loved to. And recently we got a pontoon boat, because my husband and I used to like lift her in and out of this little rowboat. All three of us were going to go in one day. So we decided we could get a pontoon boat that we could just walk her into. And she loved that thing. We could be on that all day. She loved to sit at the dunes. She loved the beach. We would take rides to the beach on her days off. She would love to watch the water by the channel in Holland, Michigan. There's a channel you can sit at. And she would love to take walks there. And watch the traffic. She also loved to watch traffic, different cars and trucks going by. The bigger the truck, the better. But the beach was a favorite place for her, and for us too. Probably that was our family, because we liked the beach. And what else? She loved buses. She would have her class come over for a picnic every year, and the bus would park in our field. There was a place where the bus could park, and she would go over it, and she would always kiss it. She would kiss the bus if we would let her. Let's see what else.
I love hearing little bits about her. I mean, it's just so nice to be able to kind of learn about her personality a little bit.
I mean, and I would be wrong if I didn't say that she had a very hard, I got dents in my wall where she got angry and threw her movie tape at it. And she had her she had her issues, but she had
Yeah,
a
why
lot.
don't you talk about
she had a
that a
lot
little
of
bit
fun.
now,
Yeah.
about some of her challenges that you felt like, just challenges of parenting a special needs child. And
Yeah, she had let me get to that page.
yeah,
she had this club foot, but then so she had problems. She walked, and at one point they had told me after one of her halo operations on her spine that she probably wouldn't be walking when she got into her 20s, but she
really.
walked till the end. Towards the end, when all her programs shut down, she wasn't walking as much, and she needed to stay active. Otherwise, like, she had arthritis bad in her knees and stuff, and that would get
Oh,
stiff.
that's why the walks helped so much, right?
Yeah,
Those
well,
4-mile walks
I
too.
pushed her in the
Right.
walk. I pushed her in her cart, but she was free to walk. I mean, she wasn't
Oh, I see. Mhm.
like, she walked around on her yard like, I didn't have to be outside with her when she was in our yard. She was comfortable in our yard. She would walk out to her swing by herself.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
but when we went on long walks, we had to push her. And at school, towards the end, if they went on walks, she kind of used her walker quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I never used the walker at home. She walked around the house and up and down the stairs. Her legs were starting to give her problems at the end, though. She wasn't going downstairs as much. I think of that was because of COVID. She wasn't getting enough exercise.
Right.
At her day program, she got enough exercise. And then when you're stuck here, and I had her bike, but it just wasn't as much. So
Right.
her walking and her nonverbal, she understood everything. Her cognitive understanding was so high. If you say we were going to grandma's, she knew exactly what we were doing. She knew it was Friday. She knew it was Sunday. She knew, she knew all that, and it was trapped inside. She had a word board that she could communicate to me.
I lost you there for a little bit. Hopefully you come back.
People went like, oh, are you back?
We're back now. Yeah.
Okay.
So she had a word board.
Yeah. And
she
would communicate with that. We tried different things, different voice boxes, different things. They're not as nice as they are now on the iPad, but it was always a thing, like, because she had a hard time holding things and grasping things. Sometimes it's like, can she carry it with her all the time? So she had this plastic word board that my husband, actually, being the engineer that he is, got the plastic material, and we had all pictures on it, and she could flip through that and find what she wanted, and she communicated quite well. At least to us, our family, we all knew how to communicate with her. She would often say to people, yeah, Kristen was asking about that, and they would look at me like, what do you mean?
Right. I was going to say, like, other people just didn't understand kind of how much was there.
Yeah, like to say, go to grandma's tomorrow, or or we drive by someplace and she'd point to it. Oh, you want to go to Myers, or you want to do that. She she was just could communicate very well to us, but other people, they don't understand. And I think so she had those difficulties, trouble walking, trouble communicating. She was incontinent, so she was in diapers. She had a weird thing. They thought that finally her incontinency, because it was just in her bladder, was due to all her spinal, because she had 2 spinal surgeries and a tethered spine. And we tried, she knew, but she just kind of dripped. But she did, and I'm not trying to be, but she could do her bowel movements on the toilet, which was a blessing for a lot of people who cared for her. But so, and as she got older, I don't think people realize this, your disabilities seem to get more pronounced, because when they're little and they can't speak, and they're, that's acceptable. But then did we get lost again?
No, we're good.
And then when you get older, it's harder, because they're still acting like a 3 to 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And you've got this grown child and they're having fits, and you can't just like pick them up and walk out of the room. It's like you're
Yeah.
coercing them
It's
out.
hard when they get to an adult body.
Yeah. And I was always thankful that there was a point when I was glad she stopped growing, that she was only 4'10" and weighed 100 pounds, because I could still pick her up.
Mhm.
But so she got very anxious towards
Mhm.
the last maybe 5 or 6 years of her life. Oh, maybe more than, yeah. And I was one who always fought the meds.
Mhm.
And finally my doctor said, why don't you just try an anti-anxiety med? And I kind of did. And we were like, why didn't we try this
I
before?
know.
It was a difference of night and day.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not saying that after that she was like totally healed or anything. She still had her fits, but yeah. So the challenges of having a special needs child in the home is you learn to adjust. You don't do anything without thinking about her. Like what other
Right.
people would say, I'm just going to go fill the car up with gas. Well, okay, am I taking Kristen with? If I leave her here, who's going to watch her? Who's going to make sure she, doesn't fall down the steps, doesn't,
Yeah.
not that she ever did. Who's going to be here if something happens? You don't, your marriage is affected, your life with your other kids. Those were the struggles. I feel like after 27 years, Dave and I learned to adapt. We started having Friday night dinners that we just did at home. That way she would go to bed and we would have a late dinner. And we grew to love that, and we still do it now. And there were so many things that we just adjusted our life to. And I don't want anybody to think that I figured it all out, because I didn't. And I don't want them to think that I didn't struggle, because we did. I mean,
Right.
our friends were being empty nesters, and we still had a child at home that needed constant care. We couldn't just say, we would have friends call and say, oh, I want to go boating this afternoon. Well, maybe if we had 2 weeks notice, we could have done that and found someone to care for her. And it got more difficult because there was a time when my older kids were there that they could watch her.
Oh,
and
sure.
My parents could help, but then they got out of the house and they had their own lives. And my parents got too old to care for. I mean, my mom is 91 and my dad passed away at 94. So then you just learn to adjust. We made our home a nice place to be. We can have bonfires, we can slide, we can skate, we have a hot tub. We just learned to adjust. But don't take me wrong, it wasn't that I wasn't sometimes kicking and screaming and asking God why. Why does it have to be like this? And this is hard. And COVID put on a really hard part of it, because, well, first of all, when she graduated out of the school system at 26, that's a really hard time for parents who have special needs, because there aren't programs open to them. Especially there are, if you have a quite high functioning disabled person. But if you have someone like Kristen who needs diapers changed and just a little bit extra, and there are disabled children who have so many more needs than Kristen, who are tube fed, who are in wheelchairs, who can't do anything. There just isn't a lot for them. And with COVID, so many programs got shut down that there's just, and that was hard on her when school quit, because that was her lifetime. Her friends were there that she made, and she just had a hard time readjusting to that. And we were fortunate. We got a really good day program at a place called Benjamin's Hope. But then when COVID came, it was shut down, and it was just her and I 24/7 at home. And that got it got hard. And now I'm thankful for it, because we had a beautiful summer together. We got to spend a whole month at our cottage that she just loved. And I just stayed there because there was nothing to come home for. There were everything was shut down, and at the lake, we could just kind of do what we wanted. and be
So what
outside.
happened then with Krissy at the end?
Okay. And can I say one more thing about
Oh,
her
sure.
special needs? I don't know if this is the time to share that for people struggling with that, there are resources out there. There's
Mhm.
one really, if you're in West Michigan, it's called the Lucas Project, and you
Mhm.
can look it up on Facebook and on just the internet. And it's Jess Plus the Mess also. And she is an advocate for caregivers.
Oh,
Um,
that's nice. It's good
yeah,
to have those kind of
yeah,
resources.
she's
Yeah.
offers different, hopefully respite ideas and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But there's still a lot to be learned. She's actually doing a documentary on April 24 at Aquinas College. It's called Unseen, about caregivers and their struggles
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
how they're unseen. So, I mean, I guess if anybody's out there feeling desperate,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yep.
connect, because it's
Mhm.
you feel you feel lonely. You feel lonely when you've lost a child. You feel lonely when you have a special needs child too,
Yeah.
because there's not a whole lot of other people out there. Um, but yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot of, yeah, I don't, so,
Yeah.
but at the end, so Kristen, in 2016, she had a surgery, which is called a LAD procedure. She had been having a lot of, so this isn't the end, but this kind of explains the end. In
Mhm.
2016, for like 4 or 5 years, she had been having a strange thing where she would throw up like bile. Every couple of months, she would get this where she would just throw up. And I depleted everything. I'd go to my regular doctor, I'd go to a cardiologist, I'd go to, finally, nobody had an answer for it. Why is she
Right.
doing this? They would say it's a virus. And I said, this is not a virus. You know, we are not getting sick. She's throwing up large amounts, quarts full of this stuff. And finally, after one particular episode, I said to my doctor, I have to be connected to and to say that they did a lot of scans, a lot of
Mhm.
ultrasounds, and found nothing. They said, no, everything looks good. You know, I thought maybe it was related to her menstrual period or something, but it was just, so finally I said, I have to have a gastroenterologist. By the time I got connected to her, Kristen had no symptoms. And they said, next
Sure.
time she has it. So the next
That's
time she
always,
had it,
yeah.
yeah, I called and they said, well, let's see how it goes. And I was pretty adamant after 4 or 5 years of this, I said, no, you promised me a sedated MRI or CAT scan. And so finally she said, okay. And we got there and they did a CAT scan and she was almost, they said she has to have an emergency surgery. Her bowels are male rotated. And has what they call, it was called a LAD procedure, where she has some kind of bindings that close and get worse as you get older. And I looked at the doctor and I said, I want a second opinion, because we had something earlier where they had gone in and done a foot surgery on her to bring her ankles down.
Mhm.
And really, in the end, it hurt her. That wasn't what was happening. It was more of the spinal stuff happening. And so she always had to walk really flat feet because of that. And that
Uh-huh.
made her walking worse than it was. But and he said, well, you got like an hour and a half because she's going to go septus. And then he said to me, how long has this been going on? And I said, well, like 4 or 5 years. And he said, I can't believe a doctor never. He goes, it's a birth defect.
Yeah.
And
I know.
said,
That's
she's
what's so
20
shocking about it,
she's
because
23 years old.
I can't
Yeah,
believe she's 23 and she had
Yeah.
all these things, and then
and all these
it's
X-rays
weird
and-
because I'm sure she would have had an upper GI at some
oh
point. you
yeah,
think?
we went.
And if
for
you would have
another-
done a small bowel follow through, which usually you do, and now I know
Yeah.
I'm talking medical, but I just don't understand how that wouldn't have somehow been picked up in all of that stuff.
I think because so much was always focused on her cerebral palsy and everything else.
Yeah, they just didn't.
Yeah, you
I mean, I
didn't.
understand that stuff falls through. It just seems crazy to me that somebody
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened upon it accidentally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so after that surgery, she really did well. She was out of the hospital. And I said to the doctor, what is it? Anything I have to look? No, she should be good to go.
Yeah.
Anything I have to think about. And he said, no, she should be good to go. Do I have to watch for anything? No.
Right.
So let's go to 2020. She was not in her, so after that surgery, she had no constipation, nothing. It was wonderful. The summer, that was after 23 years of fighting constipation, Miralax, and the whole everything. All of a sudden it's like, oh, this is wonderful. But so 2020, your program shut down. We're home all the time. I go on a sisters weekend every year with my sisters. And I know that you've had other podcasts where the parent have been gone.
It's
and
crazy.
It's like, you could break yourself over the coals 100 times for doing
I
that.
know.
But
I've had two that they went for girls' weekends in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Two.
And we just went, actually, we just went down the road to my sister. Her husband had recently passed away. So we thought we'll stay at her house. We'll go to Holland. There's a lot to do in West Michigan.
Yeah. Especially in the summertime. I mean, there's no reason to go anywhere else. People come here in the summertime, right?
Right. Well, and my other sister, one's from North Carolina, one's from Chicago. So we were just going to be in her house and go out on day trips. And everybody knew that I needed a break. I had been with Kristen 24/7 since March 14, because, and so I was looking forward to this COVID, and I went, and she was good. I have to say, I didn't need a total break. She had been at respite the week before. I had a wonderful respite person that came into our lives about 5 years before she died. And she would take her for various things. So, but anyway, Sisters Weekend, I went. And sometimes when I left, Kristen would give Dave a little bit of problem, because not problem that he could handle, but he didn't do it exactly like Mom did it.
Right. And she definitely was particular.
Yeah, she would get a little ornery, and but anyway, she was fine. Friday, I was gone Thursday night. Friday, him and my husband and Kristen went to the land together. That was something they did. That was a fun thing they did all through COVID. My husband, their company was shut down on Friday, so he would take her on Friday to give me a break. They would go up to our land up by Howard City, and she would sit in the truck. That was something she loved to do. She'd turn up the music really loud and switch the stations. He would chop wood. But anyway, and then Saturday, she went on an outing with my daughter, Casey. They went to Burger King, was finally open, and they went for a caramel sundae. That was her favorite thing. And after that, Casey gave her a bath, and she had not trying to be gross, but she had a full, she went to the bathroom, full bowel movement. So you wouldn't think. And then that was Saturday. Then Sunday, she got a little off, but not like, she just didn't want to eat. Not like my husband felt like he had to call me, or, he didn't know if she was just, sometimes she did that. She just didn't want to eat. She just didn't want to have the same. I mean, it wasn't unusual.
Right.
And then by Monday, I forget what it was. He was working from home. He was going to leave when my other daughter got home from work. And he called me at like 1, and he said, Kristen's just not right. And I said, well, do I need to come home? Because Sisters Weekend was going to be done Monday night at supper. And he goes, I don't think so. She doesn't feel hot. She didn't sleep last night. She kept wanting me to get up, and that was unusual, because usually if she got up, she'd go back to sleep. And so I said, well, do you think I can stay for supper? And he said, I think so. And if I'm getting too detailed, but anyway, so I came home Monday night after supper, and she was laying on the bed, my bed. She liked to lay on my bed sometime, because we have our bed is right by the window. And I said, what's up? And I took her in her bed, and she just was really uncomfortable. Like I ended up laying in bed with her that whole night, and she just was restless. And I didn't, with Kristen, you didn't know, was it her back?
Yeah, right.
She didn't have a fever. She threw up a little bit. She kept drinking her juice. I kept giving her juice. She kind of had night sweats. Tuesday, I called the doctor and he said, I couldn't get in.
Yeah.
And he said, I said, how about an online thing like this? Well, we can have one Thursday. I said, Thursday? She's sick right now. But anyway, he said,
Yeah.
see how she does through the night because she didn't have a fever. Wednesday morning, I called. I said, she's got to come in. I said, she's breaking the sweats. Well, of course, by that time, her regular doctor wasn't there. So I got her in. She wouldn't wear a mask. I had to get special permission for that. Like, they were local doctors from the doctor's office I've always gone through, but they didn't know her. And they're just looking at her. Her vitals were good. Her blood pressure was good. She didn't have a fever. I kept saying she's breaking out in these cold sweats. She can't walk. She doesn't want to walk.
Yeah.
And I said, I thought maybe she had a UTI, urinary tract infection, because it kind of smelled. And she's had those before. And she was kind of acting like that, like a backache. And she never cried out when she was in pain. And she never cried.
Yeah.
And so, and now looking back, I know that she was in terrible pain because she had a twisted colon. So Wednesday, they set her up on antibiotics. I got the urine test but in the middle of the night, Wednesday night, I said to my husband, we got to bring her in. She's not,
To the ER,
she's miserable. And we went to Zealand Hospital because they have a really good emergency room and it's closer. You get right in. We got right in. They did I don't know. Do you think it was a CAT scan? Yeah. Or an MRI?
CAT scan. Yeah.
CAT scan. And they came out and they said, they wouldn't let Dave in, just me. They said she has a twisted colon and it's exploded.
Oh.
And I said, okay. And they said, we gotta, check into this more. They didn't even make it sound that serious. But then they came back and
really
said,
serious. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really serious.
Yeah.
And they came back and said, a little while later, after an hour, we can't take care of it here. We're going to take her by ambulance to Blodgett to the colorectal unit down there.
Yeah.
And so they can see her. So 11 o'clock, the ambulance came. I called Dave. I said, tell her you can meet us at the ICU. She went right to ICU and they started prep. So we got there at about 12 probably. And while we were driving there, the guy in the ambulance in the back, they weren't going to let me in. And I said, I'm riding with her. Well, because of COVID rules, I said, I'm going to ride with her, So I did. I rode in the front. They let me ride. And they kept saying her blood pressure was fluctuating badly. So anyway, we got to the hospital. And we met doctors, but I always felt that she would pull through because she always did.
She always did.
Serious. I mean, she had one surgery where we thought she was going to die when she had her, her heart went berserk and the chaplain came in, that was in 2000 and she always pulled through. Yeah. And so anyway, they did the surgery at 4. And even when before she went in, I said to the doctor, she said, she'll come out with a colostomy bay. And I said, just make it reversible. And she said, I don't know if I can do that. And I said, well, just try. Because I'm thinking, here's this child with all these special needs. Now she's going to have a colostomy bag.
Right. Because that was the one thing she could do fine, right? Is have bowel movements on her own. Yeah.
Right. So she came out and, even then they said, they say the surgery went well. I feel like everything was candy coated. Maybe it was my ears. Maybe I was trying to candy coat it. Mm-hmm. I mean, but she just kept saying, we cleaned out so much stuff. There was so much in there. I didn't realize that means it was seriously bad. I knew it was bad, but not like we're not going to recover from this bad, and they tried to explain how even when you drop glitter all over, there's little pieces still left. And I got that, but nobody ever said it's going to be really touch and go.
Yeah.
Someone could have said that to me,
Yeah.
but so then she got in.
It's this whole thing that doctors feel like they want to give you hope.
Yeah.
And they want to have hope too. I
Right.
think it's hard for us to kind of even admit to ourselves sometimes
Right.
that this may not work and that things are going bad. But it's so important. We have to be honest with ourselves and honest with our patients. But I think a lot of it does go back to, I think they're not even honest with themselves as to how bad things are sometimes.
No. Right. So then when she came out of surgery, they were getting her kind of settled down. And I'm a monitor watcher. I've been in the hospital enough with that girl. I watch all the numbers and
Yeah.
I'm breathing and I want to know every bag going into her. And I'm watching that monitor, and we had an excellent nurse, and he was such good care of her. But I started, there it was about maybe 45 minutes after the surgery, I'm starting to think, and I saw her blood pressure going down, and I'm seeing the numbers, and I'm seeing him like twisting around with tubes, and I'm like getting panicky. Well, maybe it's just a kink. I said once to him, isn't that too low? Well, I think it's just, and all of a sudden I see him texting, and it was like, I saw the numbers go down, and I saw her heart go flatline, and I saw people run in, and
yeah,
I saw, the whole unit coming in, and what do they over the intercom say?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But my husband and I, we just kind of went hysterical because we knew what was happening. I find my husband didn't at first. I said, look at the numbers she's going. And finally I was kind of just saying, they were getting the clamps out. I was like, just let her go. Because I just, to see her in that state with all those tubes. But anyway, they took us out of the room, and we went in the other room, and we thought she was gone. And they came back like 10 minutes later and said, we got her back. And we were a mess. I can't even describe how, you're a mess.
I know.
You're shaking, you're panicking, you're shivering. And at that point I thought, she's going to make it. She just made it through a 6-minute coding. She coded for 6 minutes. But then I had to watch them for like the next hour and a half. They tried to get a tube down her because her throat is really small from all the scar tissue from the spinal surgeries in her neck and everything. And they finally got her, and they got her regulated. And it's, there was a tube everywhere. There was, and they didn't, after the surgery, they didn't close her up because of the severity of the infection. They don't do that because they might have to go back in. And at one point during the next day evening, they almost took her back in because she got a really bad fever. And so it was just up and down for that first week. She had a bad fever. She gained 30 pounds of fluid. She was swollen. She couldn't move anything. She would respond if we would say like, pull my hand. So she did that sometimes, not all the time. She would respond. I'm sure she was medicated. But so the first couple of days, they were all about that respiratory machine. And they said, she's doing really good,
Yeah.
We're going to try get her off. And then it ended to be this endless week of, we're going to get her off the respiratory. We're going to get her off the respiratory. And they couldn't. She just kept needing that. And we would get these different things. The respiratory therapist would say, she's doing really good. Well, really good doesn't mean they're getting off. And I would say to the doctor, we're going to get her off today, right? And they would try, and they couldn't. So it kept being that. And that was along with trying to drain. They couldn't get the, you have the is it called the latex that they put in to flush out
Lasix. Mm-hmm.
Lasix. And then,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they were trying to flush out the infection too, you know, and so she's swollen, the catheter fell out, they couldn't get it back in, her bladder was, you know, they had some other thing that sucks, and it was just everything. They tried to put in, one night they tried for an hour and a half to put a new line in her arm, and I argued with the doctor because I said, you know what, I was right. It didn't last 4 hours and they had to take it out because it collapsed.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's just so hard.
It was
all
just
that is
so hard. And
watching your child kind of
Yeah.
deteriorate like that. Mhm.
And I think when it comes to the end, you think by 2 weeks of that, you just want them out of their pain.
Yeah.
You want them out of their pain. But then all of a sudden they're gone and you're like, oops, I didn't really want them gone. But I should go back. She did pretty good the first week. And then the second week, things just went downhill. At the first week they had put on they call it a vac seal, I think. It sucks out the wound. And when that came off, they couldn't put a new one on.
Mm-hmm.
And so she kept they couldn't get her on the respiratory to work. They couldn't get the wound seal at the very end. They couldn't even bandage it. She was just leaking.
Yeah.
All over. I mean, you're in
Yeah.
all this day and age, they just had diapers on her tummy to absorb. But so it's actually good that I go back to this, because when you get away from that, you think, oh, why did I make that decision? But that's why.
Yeah. It's just
and
it's so hard because you just do one more thing. You just keep doing one more thing. And you can kind of lose focus on the whole picture when you just are treating one little thing at a time. Oh, the vacuum seal's off. Oh, I guess we'll do this now. And not thinking about, okay, the vacuum seal's off. So this wound is now open. We already have all those bacteria that were in there from the bowel. Now it's just open to the air and anything can get there. And we can't get her off the ventilator, and this and this and this. And she had coded for 6 minutes and we don't know what's left cognitively. And so I think that's what happens, is that you just keep addressing one little problem at a time, and no one takes this time to pause and think of everything.
And that's it. And each doctor, each one of those things. And she they tried to tube feed her and she started regurgitating. So each one of those things, you have the respiratory person, the ICU doctor, the colorectal doctor, and they all have their opinion. But they're only having their opinion on their one little thing. And if their one little thing was the only thing, it would be okay. I mean, I just think back to, I remember when a patient was born in the NICU. It was my very last day of my residency. Actually, it was really bizarre, but there was a baby that was born with a diaphragmatic hernia or it was born with an omphalocele, which means that all your intestines end up being kind of on the outside. Oh yeah.
And it had a single ventricle heart. So instead of having a left ventricle and a right ventricle, it only had one. So it had hypoplastic left heart. So it had terrible. And so the heart actually was out of the body too. So it wasn't just the intestine, it was the heart too. Well, if you have that at the time, if you had a hypoplastic left heart, you had a 50% chance of survival. If you had this omphalocele diaphragmatic hernia thing, you had a 50% chance of survival. So somebody told this family that there was a 50% chance of survival. There was not.
There was
not. There was no chance of survival because they had both. And you can't do it when they have both. And here we are, I'm trying to do chest compressions on basically an open heart when it stops, just with my latex gloves on or sterile gloves on. This is crazy what's happening. But it's because people didn't think about the fact that a 50% chance of survival plus a 50% chance of survival.
Right.
You can't even multiply them and say, okay,
Right.
now it's 25. It's like,
Right.
no, together, that's 0.
Right.
Let's be honest with the family and tell them that this is 0. And with you, with thing after thing after thing after thing, nobody wanted to step back and look
Yes.
at all of these things together means her chance of survival is actually 0, not 10% from this, because her survival odds were low anyway, right? After this
Right.
perforated bowel and all of that, she had
And
low chance
coding.
of survival.
Yeah.
But then when all these other things start happening, like it goes from low to nothing.
Yeah.
And it's hard for somebody. I think it's hard to be the first one to say this is 0. And
Right.
so I think what ended up happening to you is you ended up being the first one to realize this is 0.
did. And that made it so hard.
Yeah.
And because, and I think, well, my husband being a team leader, what he does is engineering. He always says, there's nobody to head up the team. He says, when we have a project, Krissy should be a project and there should be a team leader of this whole thing, which there isn't. And that is, but, just to make that. So then we had this whole, when we started talking to the doctor said to me, the ICU doctor had said, well, I heard you say, just let her go. And he said, do you know that we can't do that? And I said, because she's a disabled adult. She does. Well, I guess I had asked a DNR in case this happens again. I had said, and he said, well, we can't do that because she's a disabled adult. You have to have a court order. And that we were like, but we're her legal guardians. We went through this whole thing at 18 to be her legal guardians and to make all these decisions. And they're like, well, I don't think so. So this whole thing came up. So I should say the first week she did pretty good, but then that second week when things started going down, they couldn't do the vac, they were draining her belly from everything. Then I said to Dave, we got to get this DNR in place. We have to be able, if something happens again, she codes again, we're ready for this,
Right.
So and then it was at that time, no nurse or doctor ever said anything to us, but my daughter who works at Mary Freeman said to me, Mom, is there an ethics committee? And I said, I don't know. So
there is,
goes,
but yeah.
So I asked and I said, oh yeah, do you want to meet with them? And we're like, yeah. So it was just a woman and we met with her and she was very understanding. And she was on our side to get this. So I don't know how it all got set up, but we got finally, and it was set up on like Monday or Tuesday after Kristen had probably been there 12 days and was just going downhill. We got set up for this court date. And this was after talking to our lawyer who he didn't even know that. He was unsure that, and he looked into it for us and he was great. And he was the one who said to us, he said, those doctors are trying to play God. He said, you can't let them do that. And I said, I know they're, when they were trying to be like, you don't want to be the doctor that gives no hope. But you're right.
Yeah.
Everybody had their little piece and nobody, the respiratory said, well, she's just doing this. So on Tuesday night, my husband went, he stayed that night because we were there the whole time. He would go, I would come. Kristen had one of us there all the time and we were the only two allowed because of COVID. On Tuesday night, a doctor came in, the colorectal doctor came in and said, hey, we totally think Kristen's going to recover. It's just going to take a long time. And at 6 o'clock the next morning, the ICU doctor came in and said, she's got to go on a trach. We have to get her on a trach. And we get her on a trach. She's got like 10% chance of surviving. So he went to bed thinking, I've got this long road ahead of me,
but it'll be okay. Because the colorectal surgeon is looking at her abdomen.
Right.
And according to that, that will get better,
Right. And so it was that next morning, I was texting my sister who's a nurse, and she said to me, ask that doctor what a total recovery looks like.
Yeah.
You know, what does it look like? A vent, a feeding tube, a colostomy bag, laying on a bed to
Yeah.
live maybe 6 more months. I don't know. And then the
Yeah.
doctor said, and she will have to move to a place where you probably won't be able to go, where we won't
Yeah.
be able to see her because of COVID. There was like this hush whisper about floor number 5 at Blodgett. And I'm like, what is this floor? It must be the rehabilitation. I don't know, maybe you know, but I'm like,
There is a rehab floor at Blodgett.
yeah. And so I had one nurse who had been with Kristen, and I wish I could see her again. She knew that we were trying to get the DNR, and she said, you are doing the right thing. She said, I have been a nurse for 30 years. She goes, you are doing the right thing. She said, you would be selfish not to. And I like to think of that, but still you have all this guilt and all these things going on. But anyway,
I like that she said that you would be selfish not to. That is true. Because I even think about Andy sometimes, and you know how he died. I mean, his neck was broken immediately on impact of the crash, right? And had he not also torn the blood vessels, so he bled out and died.
Right.
I mean, perhaps had that stayed intact, he would have just had a severed spinal cord and been completely paralyzed, but maybe sort of living, right? And there are times when I think to myself, yeah, for me, that's totally what I want. Right. For me, I would have still gotten to hold him. I would have still gotten to have him, talk to him, all of that.
Love him.
But for him, that wouldn't have been the best thing. No. Right? If he would have been completely and totally paralyzed, unable to ever talk, unable to ever communicate, unable to do anything at all, that wouldn't have been the right choice for him. But for me, I mean, it turns out it didn't matter because he had even more problems than that. But I do think about the fact that, I mean, I'm sort of glad I didn't have to make that choice. Because that would have been what I would have selfishly wanted to do, even though it wouldn't have been in his best interest. So that's why that was such a good comment for her to say to you that you were, because you're doing the right thing for her. Because you've been her caregiver forever. So for you, it doesn't feel like the right thing sometimes. No, personally.
Because I always made her better. I mean, not me, of course, by the grace of God. I was always able to nurse her back to health, and I kind of took pride in that. So it was like a failure for me. But so then we finally had our court date, and it was online in this little room off the hospital. And the judge, our lawyer, had said, oh, this is a really good judge. I have no problem. But the judge gave us the workout. You know, why are you doing this? Well, you know, you don't want to commit to caring for her. And he even called the doctor back on and the ethics committee person back on to the courtroom via podcast. And, you know, by that time, the doctor was like, this is the best thing. You know, he said that to the judge, and the ethics committee said, I have no question that these people love their daughter and that they would do anything to have her with them. You know, so that was hard. But then after that, I didn't know that, you know, even then I wish that some doctor had come to us, because then it was like, okay, now we're gonna take her off. And this is what's gonna happen. And it's like,
what?
I want to talk. You know, I need my pastor here. I need something, you know, and he couldn't come because of COVID. And it was just like,
okay, the court order's here. You're done. Yeah.
I felt like, could I have some people come in and tell me how this is going to feel and what I'm going to think when it's done? And, you know, and by 4:00, they took her off, and she breathed. She's such a fighter. She breathed for 6 hours on her own. But, you know, we were able to be there. That meant a lot. But nothing prepares you for that. So
No. And I've talked to other people too, and you think you're ready and you think that, you've thought about this and you know what it's going to be like, but
right.
that in that moment when it happens, you're like, oh, wait, what?
Yeah, right. And then I'm
No,
like,
no, this is not.
she's not suffering anymore, but oops, she's not here either.
Right.
That was the hard part.
Right. You have those thoughts at the exact same time.
Yeah. You're like, I don't want her
okay,
to
she's
suffer.
not suffering. I'm so glad she's not suffering. She's at peace now.
Yeah.
Oh my word, she's not here.
And she's never coming back.
No, and I'm never having her again.
Yep. And that's the neverness of it. That's very hard. But yeah, I mean, and that's what, and I don't know how someone can prepare you for that.
Right.
But
and I think you can't. I mean, I think
no.
I wish you could, but I think you can't.
No, I think you can't. I know. And the hard thing I think with Krissy, and I want to have just a few minutes to say how we honor her.
Yes. We probably ought to jump to that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do feel like a lot of people thought, well, she was a lot of work. Phew. Don't you just feel relieved that she's in heaven now? And it's like,
and now you are an empty nester and whatever.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
But the deal is she was your identity.
She was my identity, and I'm still groping for that.
Yeah. Who am I now?
Yeah. And I was always Krissy's mom.
You were Krissy's mom for 27 and a half years. You were Krissy's mom.
And when I say that, when you say always Andy's mom, I would always say, I'm Krissy's mom. And people go, oh, you're Krissy's mom. Wherever I went, people know I
you're
was
much more
mom.
Krissy's mom than even Charlene, right?
Right.
Krissy's mom.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I don't know if we went through that, but I just hope that somehow doctors, hospitals can somehow learn to be a little more tender.
Yeah.
A little more preparation. Maybe they could add a class to that in medical
school. I've done one medical school class has gotten a lecture from me. So we'll see if we can get more to get lectures from me.
Good.
The students thought it was great and they learned a ton. So we're going to maybe keep going that way. So I'm trying to work on that now.
Well, good. So
tell me how you honor Krissy today.
Okay. Well, first I can make this short because I know our time is running out. I always have a candle burning in my house for her when I'm home. I make candles, so I just always have them there. One thing my husband and I started doing after she died, our daughter-in-law got us into going rock finding. So we're like Petoskey stone finders. We go to the beach and spend an afternoon, and my husband polishes them, and he actually brings some of his favorites to her grave. And there's just one more thing I want to say. You know what is so hard? When you pick out that beautiful name for your child, like Andrew, Kristen, Ruth Eberlein, you never expect to put it on a tombstone. That is a terrible thing.
Yep.
But anyway, I'm not a big person to go to the grave. I've been there, but another thing I did is I got 88 by 10s of her.
Wow.
And I put them up where you have on the wall the picture of your 4 children. I change hers like every couple of weeks just to keep different memories. Her alive, her on her bike, her in the boat, her up at the land, her on the quad.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that idea.
And I have, for a while, she has a little Matchbox bus collection. So I just have one. I just have one of those on the counter. On her first birthday, my husband and I don't think you can see it. We got a tattoo.
Oh, did you? I can't see it.
That says Krissy. Can't see it. But anyway.
Oh no, I can see it.
We each got one that says Krissy with a heart under it. So when we get old and can't remember, that will always be on us. And a tree. Our neighbor, we were going to get a tree. I had thought a tree would be good to plant in her. She always loved the tree out the door. We have a tree she liked to watch the leaves rustle. There were some at the cottage she liked to watch too. Our neighbors, we have great neighbors who we've had for 37 years. They bought her a tree. And we planted it up at our land actually, because my husband said that will be in our family longer than our home. Yeah. And my daughter-in-law made us a stone with her name on it, Kristen, in a rainbow. and
Nice.
put some of the beach glass in there that Dave and I had collected too on our beach walks, and also made a rainbow. So that's up at our land in her memory. And
Oh, those are beautiful ways
yeah.
to keep her memory alive.
and
I
I'm
love
like
it.
you, I would have been the kind of person who said, what? They haven't cleaned out their room after a year and a half? No, that's me. I mean, slowly, once in a while, I go in there and I can get rid of a few things. I just can't do the,
It's just, there's no
Yeah.
timetable. There's no time.
there's no timetable, and I figure I just do it a piece at a time. And so those are some of the ways we honor. The other day I walked out to the field and there was a lug nut in the field, which I picked it up and I put it on the windowsill, and Dave said to me, why did you keep that? And I said, because he always called Kristen his Louis lug nut.
Really? And you
I
just
don't
found
know.
a lug nut randomly?
And I found a lug nut sitting in the field, and I said, so I have to keep that there. We had a lot of names for her, Krissy, Louis lug nut, Louis, but
Oh.
but 1 hour can't even cover her. But
No, 1 hour can't, but I hope
And
we
so-
did an okay job today and
Yeah.
letting people kind of know some of those things. I think learning about some of those struggles that you can have end of life, I think that's good for us all to know, actually.
right,
Right. Going forward, and then just learning about Krissy and helping to keep her memory alive. So I just love talking to you today. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing her
Thank
with
you
us.
for having me.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing, Kristen.
Mhm.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.